The skills shortage is no stranger for the construction industry and the built environment. We hear about it all the time about how we need to get more young people into the workforce. And there's quite a big obstacle that we're facing as well when it comes to that. A recent poll by Savanta Commerce that interviewed 4,000 young people found that 37% would never ever consider a career in the construction industry. So how do we fix that? And what is more, once we have young people in the workforce, how do we make them reach their full potential? I'm Julia Hatmaker, editor of Place Northwest, and today we're going to be digging into that topic. And joining me, I have Jaime Stanton, Graduate Business Development Manager at Morgan Sindall, and I have George Hudson, who's the Graduate Project Manager for the Built Environment at Gleeds. Jaime, George, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
So we've already heard about how that 37% group would never consider a career in the construction industry, but you guys obviously did. Mm-hmm. So what brought you into this field? Jaime, start us out.
Barry Roberts, in a simple answer.
Oh.
So I used to work at Royal Chamber of Commerce. I worked there since I was 16, started on work experience while I was in school, worked through every single department that they had, and eventually was running their events programme. At the same time, I was studying business psychology at Manchester Met University. So I was there for 3 years, and during my second year, I was running this event for the Chamber whilst I worked basically doing university and went full-time at the Chamber around those hours. And I was at this event and I was chatting away to Barry one day, and Morgan Sindall was a strategic partner of Real Chamber, so they used to come to a lot of our events. And one day I was just talking to Barry, and we're talking about how I believe that people should be in their job roles because we base it around their skills and what they're really, really good at, and it relates a lot to what I was doing at university at the time. And then a few weeks later, Barry contacted me and sort of said they've been looking for someone to do business development at Morgan Sindall and that he thought it'd be a really good fit. So he asked me to then go and sort of have a bit of like a conversation, find a little bit more about the job, and I basically did that and ended up getting the job. But I still had a year left at university, so I did some events in the meantime before I started, and then I started in July last year with Morgan Sindall. So yeah, it came up a bit out of the blue, really.
Yeah, but that's great. It's someone coming out and being like, hey, here's a career opportunity. Because we already discussed like construction industry. It's not just people in hard hats. There's so much going on in that field. There's business development. George, how did you get involved?
I mean, it weren't until last year university that I'd even considered going in the industry. So I originally did a degree in geography for my undergraduate. So people think that's, guessing flags and colouring maps and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot more to it. So I primarily did human geography and kind of economic geography, kind of movement of people, kind of the built environment. So I kind of based my dissertation on the built environment because it was what I was interested in at the time. I was interested in changing urban environments. So I did my dissertation on the identity of Manchester that's been changing over the recent years. There's been an absolute property boom, the skyscrapers that are going up. So that kind of just interested me. And then it weren't until I had a conversation with one of my dad's friends who works for Peel Holdings, and Peel own basically everything in the Northwest. They're just their land holdings is huge. And he recommended, I go down the construction industry, and he said, well, why don't you start off doing project management and then kind of tailor from there and see what work stream you want to go into from that, because you kind of getting a little bit of everything there. So he recommended Gleeds to me. He'd worked with Gleeds on Media City before for years, and after literally one interview with Gleeds, I kind of got a feel for the company, what they're going to offer me, and yeah, I took the job there last February, and then they were like, well, when can you start? And I was like, well, in the summer, if you don't mind. I'm going to finish my degree, and then if I've got the choice, then I'm going to go travelling for a bit and then come back. And they were like, no, we want you to do that now. So it was like, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I started last August at Gleeds, and then I joined the built environment team from there, which is a growing team. So there's 8 of us now, soon to be 9. So there was only 3 when I joined, and from that we've just kind of been doing a lot of development management, kind of planning and enabling delivery to get you to the construction period of projects. So, but I'm absolutely loving it. I think it's been a great opportunity for myself, and I'm looking forward to kind of where it leads me, because I still don't know now. So we'll see where I end up.
So I'm just curious, if you guys had been asked when you were 16, would you consider a career in the property and construction industry? Would you have said, yeah, I'll consider it? Or would you have been like, no, not for me?
Probably
no.
not. Yeah, probably not.
I did actually consider engineering, so I did physics while I was at sixth form, and I really wanted to go and work for Airbus. But the way that things panned out with the pandemic, they didn't take on as many apprentices that year. So unfortunately, I wasn't successful in getting an apprenticeship there. That's how I ended up at Manchester Met University doing business psychology, and then it's brought me to where I am today. So it all worked out quite well in the end, really.
So that's a big butterfly effect for you. Like, you know, imagine if you got accepted, like, who knows what could have happened.
Wouldn't have been here today.
Yeah.
Love that. And I think what was really cool is hearing from both of you the importance of someone else coming in and being like, hey, here's a career opportunity.
Yeah.
Like if it hadn't been for Barry or your father's friend, like who knows where you guys would have ended up. So that's a good message for everyone listening to the podcast. Go out, tell young people about what professions are available here and get them involved. Is there any kind of message that you might, taking on that note about how to get more young people interested in the industry, any kind of advice that you give that maybe we need to be doing?
I mean, I'd just say I'm a big preacher of just be yourself, because, you know, you get a lot of people in the industry that'll think that they have to be a certain way, think they have to be very professional. But I think the way you leave your mark on people is being yourself. And I'd say, like, I don't know the statistics, but I'd say 90% of the time business is going to come from a one-on-one interaction of your relationship with someone. And if you get on with them on a friendly basis outside of work, chances are it's going to lead to a bit of work. And I think if you're yourself, then you can kind of build your own kind of network from there. I wouldn't come in and change anything and feel like you have to be a different way.
Jamie?
So I think whether you're a parent, you've got a niece, a nephew, any younger children within your family, talk to them about what you do. Try and explain it in as simple terms as you possibly can. But the most important thing is just get them interested in the industry to begin with. If you've been out on site, show them pictures of what you've been out doing on site. At least that's a start. Let them try your hard hat on and your high-vis jacket. There's no harm in doing that. But definitely just speak to them about it. And, you know, maybe the ones that are a little bit older and they're doing their GCSEs and they're in sixth form or even university, really at any age, give as much influence as you possibly can and really tell them, because there's so many times where people probably say, like, you say, what does your dad do? And they might be a project manager, for example, and they're like, well, I don't know. They just, you know, they tell people what to do. I don't think anyone actually really knows sometimes. I think one thing that everybody could do is just sit down with any children that you could have any sort of influence with that you know in your family or your network, and just really tell them what you do and try and get them interested in the industry. Sort of, I remember when I joined, everyone was sort of like, oh wow, you're so young, you've got so many years in you, and you're going to really, you know, I can't believe you've joined this industry. And sometimes people could like look down on you a little bit almost in that. But I think my advice would sort of just be, don't look at younger people or graduates and apprentices as the cheaper option for the business, because they're not. They're a lot more than that. People of our generation have got so much more to give. You know, we're seeing different trends and we're more maybe like technologically advanced. We often go on the likes of TikTok, and I know that's a bit of controversial one sometimes, and a lot of businesses say, oh well, they're the TikTok generation, when actually it can be a really useful marketing tool for businesses. And, you know, just take bricklayers, for example. I went into a school and spoke to some year 9 students, and at the end of the day we said, what would you like to do in the construction industry if you're interested? And they said, I want to be a bricklayer. And I said, why is that? And they said, oh, because I've seen on TikTok that you get like £50 per brick that you lay, so I think that's a really good job. So we were like, right, okay. However, it does show that that is a really good way to reach these really young people that are still in school, where we can influence what careers they want to go down. So that, for example, of just having that sort of knowledge of TikTok and being interested in it as a younger person, I think can be really useful for businesses. But also it's the different ideas that you can bring into the business. We are a different generation, and I do think we probably think differently in some ways. So I think it can actually add so much more value to your business than just being a cheaper option. And effectively, we are the future of the workforce. So I think if you are a business, definitely do consider taking on, it might not be a graduate or an apprentice, but maybe somebody that is a little bit earlier on in their career, and really trying to evaluate how much more they can give you. And it will take a little bit more time to put into them with less experience, but what you will get out of it is so much more investing into them.
So it sounds like the main advice that we'd give is, if you're trying to approach young people to get them interested, is one, actually have that conversation, meet them where they're at, even if that means TikTok, and having a conversation about how much money you get per brick. That's valid. It's a good conversation to have. and to look beyond just people who are in specific programs to get them into construction, and look at the wider kind of university situation or college situation as a whole, and realizing that different people have different perspectives and different skill sets, and that's all great. All right, so we've gotten young people into the workforce. Step 1 accomplished. Step 2, let's discuss what value they're bringing and how we can help them overcome any challenges they might face in integrating into the workforce and reaching their true potential. So first things first, I'd just like to hear from you guys what you think are some of the values that young people bring and maybe some of the challenges that they face.
From my perspective, I've gone straight from GCSEs, straight to A-levels, straight to a degree. And this is the first time where I've had to get my teeth stuck into something. So by the end of all of that, I was so ready to work. I was so ready to, get paid for what I'm worth, get into an industry and kickstart my career. And I think that motivation really spiraled me on. So ever since I've got in the door at Gleeds, I've just thought, right, work, do your best, give you 100%, and people will eventually notice. And I think it's a very important thing to have that work ethic, because I don't know, for our generation, I think a lot of people have a bit of a stigma, have a bit of they'd rather sit at home, play video games, they'd rather scroll on TikTok all day, and, they don't want to go out and socialise, stuff like that. But for me, it was the complete opposite. I love socialising. I like going to meet new people, speak to them. And I think, well, if I can combine that with my work ethic, get in the industry, start learning, all of them things are going to come together, and it's going to work out, really. So
yeah, I agree. And obviously do business development, so it sort of is a lot of my role is going out there and meeting with people, and that is something that I've always been really comfortable with. And especially working from such a young age, I was always dealing with businesses. I learned how to actually type corporate emails to people and speak to people over the phone, speak to people in person, which is not something you get taught in school. No. And it is also a big perception of our generation that, they're the email kids, and that, there's a lot of things that get joked about because they say people are too scared to pick up the phone. And I think that is true maybe for some of the generation, but not for everybody. And there's a real stigma around that, and targeting that would be really, really useful. And I think it is down to, when you're in the schools and universities, to sort of try and help that. I think getting business experience from such a young age is really beneficial. Yeah. But in terms of specifically back relating to Morgan Sindall and what I've been doing, so since I started, I've been doing a lot of meetings with our consultants, going out to networking events, practically 1, 2, 3 every single week. I've just sort of thrown myself into the deep end because I didn't know anyone in the industry. I've also come from the Wirral/Liverpool, so I've not really know anyone in Manchester either, even though I did come to university here, I didn't stay here. So I've just really thrown myself in, and what I was sort of finding was I was going to these meetings with Emma, sitting with our consultants, and we'd sit there for 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, and we'd discuss different projects and upcoming pipeline and so on. And I could probably sit there for the whole time, and all I would say was, kind of, good morning, I'm Jaime, nice to meet you, and then a goodbye at the end of the session. And I think the first few times maybe I might have thought it was a little bit disheartening, and I was thinking, gosh, I'm not even speaking in these meetings. But then when I actually started then going out and I was networking, I realised how valuable they were, because I was using everything that I'd heard everyone talk about in these meetings. I was then talking to people about it when I was out networking. I sounded like I really knew what I was doing. I've obviously not come from a technical background, and when I do go out, I often meet with project managers, QSs, we have architects out there, and sometimes it can be a little bit daunting because you sort of feel like, I don't know all the technical lingo, and you don't know all the words that they use and so on. So sometimes you can sort of think, that's going to be a bit of a hard one. But going to those meetings have really, really helped. So I sort of had that part, and then I was having the networking part where I was going out, and I was always finding that no matter what, I was practically always the youngest person in the room whenever I was out there networking. And I was networking with the directors of companies, the senior associates, everybody that was like, a lot higher up than myself as a graduate. And I was able to do it, it was fine. It was not a problem at all, and I really enjoyed doing it and growing my network in that way. But then I would also go to events that were targeted more towards young people. So, for example, Place Young Things is a really great one. I do the FFT, I'm on their committee, and Women in Property also have just started doing some younger events there as well. So I started going to them, and it was great because I was with all these people that were like similar age and in similar positions in their careers. But then there was these two separate things and there was nothing that joined the two together. So I was sort of like, so we've got all the young people and the graduates here that are just really willing to learn and are going out there and trying. And then we've got all of these directors and senior associates who have all this valuable knowledge that have been in the industry for so long, but we sort of seem really separate. And I know that from my experience of sitting in meetings with Emma, how beneficial it has been. So me and Emma sort of had a conversation, and then we spoke to Rob, who works for Ramble, and we sort of all had the same idea that we needed to do something that would bring these two groups of people together. And that's where we came up with our idea of Next Working. So we basically invite someone that is more experienced in the industry, has been there for a good few years, and they will bring along with them maybe an apprentice, a graduate, someone that's really new to the industry. And we have no more than 12 people. We sit around the table and we try and get every different discipline there. And we'll just sit around the table and we'll all just have a chat, and it's really informal. Yeah. So that's actually how I met George. Yep. He came along with Gleeds, and it was actually the first one that we did in January. So we've just finished our 6th networking now. This month it will be. We did do it at UK Reef where George came again, and we doubled up this time. So we had twice as many people, which was really good. But we've since, the whole idea of it is sort of to connect the dots between those people who have more experience and those newer into the industry, because obviously I know how beneficial it had been for myself, so we wanted to find somewhere, and it has been really, really good because, you know, there's now people that we have sort of our own network where we'll then go out off to events and we can message each other and say, oh, are you going? Because then there's nothing better than when you go to an event and you know there's going to be one person there, a friendly face that you can say hello to. So that's sort of where Next Working came from, and I think anyone that speaks to me out in the industry will know I'm such an advocate of giving young people these opportunities. And I say all the time to people, you know, where's your young people? Let's get them out. You know, they can come to these events with me. And I've actually had a few businesses message me and say like, oh, we've just had a new graduate start, or we've had a new business development person start who's fairly new to the industry. Can you give them like any hints and tips, or can they message you and come to a few events with you? And I'm always like, yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely love that, because I'd love to think that, you know, people are coming out and think, oh, well, Jamie's going, I don't mind, so I'll go with her, and then I can make it a better experience for them, because I understand people do get really nervous going to events, and I still do sometimes now. But
you just got to throw yourself in the deep end, because it works out for the best. But I think what you said, Jaime, I think it's opportunity. A lot of the companies will look at the graduates, trainees, and they won't be given the opportunity to go to these big events, because, you know, you're seen as, oh, you need to work up your way to be privileged to, you know, attend these events. And, you know, obviously we're spending money, you know, we're investing. We want you to kind of do a bit of business development, you know, talk to clients, you know, try and get some work. A lot of the time they won't give you that chance as a graduate. Now, I'm lucky in the team I'm in. I have been given that chance. Obviously, from that, I've met people like Jaime, etc. But that's just because I was given the opportunity. You know, I wouldn't know where to look for these events. You've got to kind of look yourself. You just got to kind of keep speaking to other people. What are you doing? Where are you? UK Reef. What's UK Reef? Look into it, and then, you know, anyone from the business going, no harm in asking.
Yeah, and I think what's coming across is that young people are hungry and they want these opportunities. So, and it's more than them just being a sponge and soaking up information as well. There's something to contribute. I mean, Jaime, you were talking about Next Working events, which sound absolutely fantastic, but it's not just a one-way conversation with that more experienced person talking to the next more experienced person. You guys are as much part of that conversation as everyone else, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the reason that we keep it to 12 people, we always have at Albert Schloss, is because we have this specific table that everyone fits around perfectly. So everybody from end to end can hear each other, what they're saying, and it's so that everybody is involved in the conversation. So we sort of also have a 10-minute topic that we have for every Next Working breakfast. So we don't always have to use it, because sometimes we talk that much.
Topic, yeah, sometimes.
I think when we did the first one, we actually forgot what the topic was, because we've done so much talking that we just completely forgot about it. But it's sort of just there as somewhere that everybody can put their input into, and it's actually really nice because we go around the table separately and sort of listen to everyone. But even just been doing Next Working, it's really highlighted. We have so many people in the industry that haven't come from an industry background in university. Yeah. I think when we did our first one, I think there was one person that had done an architectural degree, and they were doing their part two. The job we're in now, like one person. Only one. I think we had someone that had done a vet's degree that has now ended up as a QS. So there's so many different backgrounds, and I think that was the first time it had really highlighted, like, right, okay, this is, I always thought it was just me, and I used to be like, oh gosh, it's just me that's not come from a construction background. And that was such a nice morning because everybody was sat there like, no, I've been doing completely different degrees.
Bit of reassurance in a way, isn't it? Yeah,
It was.
You're not on your own. Yeah.
Definitely.
I have to say, my ambition when I was little was to be president of the United States. And since I'm under the age of 70, I still have a really good chance.
Yeah.
Or under the age of 80, really, at this rate. So we'll see. One common thread throughout today has been talking about mentors. We haven't actually said that word, but we've talked about having those one-on-one relationships where someone who's more experienced has kind of shown the ropes or at least been a source of encouragement. So just kind of taking the conversation over to the mentor perspective, I'd love to hear from you guys what advice you would give to future mentors.
I'd say, well, obviously you're going to be shaping their career now, so you've got to get to know them on a personal level, because I think it's very, at first, when they kind of, if you're told as a mentor, you know, oh, you're going to get a graduate, you're going to get an apprentice or a trainee under you, it's very easy to go, oh, okay, well, they're going to come into the industry, they're not going to know anything, more work for me. Actually, it might not be, because if you actually get to know the person, you get to know how their brain works, you know, how they operate. That could be feeded directly into your work, and you could kind of work as a bit of a Batman and Robin sidekick, that type of thing. So I think the stigma of thinking, okay, I know I don't want to manage someone, you know, it's too much effort. You won't know until you actually speak to that person on that level and think, okay, can I help shape this person's career? What can I teach them? And I think you'll find that they have a lot to learn off you.
Perfect. And then Jamie, you've mentioned Emma in a past answer. So she's been your mentor, correct?
Yeah. So Emma is Emma Ratcliffe, and a lot of people do know her in the industry, and it's actually really helpful for me because not only is it helpful because she's such an amazing mentor, but also when I am out networking and talking with people and I mention Morgan Sindall, they instantly know Emma. And I think she's so well recognised in the industry, and she really deserves to be, because she's an absolutely amazing mentor. You know, she's trusted me with absolutely everything, you know, trusted me to come in one day and said, can we do a podcast? And she was like, yeah, of course, what do you want to do it about? And here we are today doing the podcast. So but it's not just that, you know, trusting me to go out and represent the business, go and talk to people, but without her I wouldn't have been able to go out and do that, because as I've mentioned, you know, I'm constantly in meetings with Emma and listening to how she talks, and she's been in the industry for quite a while now and she really does know her stuff. And I just think that, yeah, she's been absolutely brilliant for me and has taught me so much. So I am very, very grateful to have her, and she is also like my very good friend. We also love a little gossip every now and then, so yeah, we have a nice balance of professional and personal relationship.
But it is about getting to know them as a person, so just like what George was saying. All right, so we've talked about the mentors. Let's lean into the mentees now. What advice would you give mentees?
My advice would just be to literally soak everything up. And I know it's something we have sort of said quite a few times and talking about being a sponge, but really do just listen to everything, because you honestly learn so much from it. And don't get me wrong, the first few weeks is so daunting when you're coming in and you're hearing all these words being used, but eventually you get used to them. And on that point as well, ask the questions, because no question is a silly question, and everybody says this all the time, and I always thought, you know what, I'll always ask the question, because I do ask a lot of questions. But when I started, I was working in the office, and for the first 3 weeks I didn't have a cup of tea, and it was because everybody had their own coffee cup, so I thought you had to bring your own in, and I kept forgetting to bring mine in. And then one day someone asked me and said, oh, can you go make me a cup of tea? And I was thinking, oh god, they haven't got a coffee cup, how am I going to do this? So I looked all around the kitchen, which I'd done before, and still couldn't find them. And then eventually I opened one cupboard, and there it was, about 100 coffee cups in the cupboard. And I'd gone 3 weeks without a cup of tea or coffee, because I didn't ask the question because I thought it was too silly, because I just assumed everyone brought them in. So definitely always ask the questions, because like I said before about my non-technical background, if we're ever in meetings with people and I don't understand a word they've said, if I don't feel like it's the right time to ask it there and then, I'll make a note of it and then I'll go and ask someone afterwards. We're in external meetings, but internally, if I'm ever having a conversation with anyone, you know, I go out and see the site teams, I go out on site, and I know all about piling now. I know about cathodic rods, because I go out onto site and I get involved with the site team and I ask those questions, and it's actually been really beneficial to also do that. So I would also say, if you do get a chance to go out onto your sites and get your muddy boots on and go and have a little walk around, because I also find it's really beneficial to help me remember things about the site. You know, we've got so many different sites at the minute, and it's really difficult when you're out there talking to people, remembering who all your consultants and your clients are and everything about that site. So I like to go out there and do a site tour and really get to know what is going on there, so then when I'm out in person I can talk about it. So my advice would be ask the questions and take everything in, and just don't be afraid to be yourself, like what George said earlier.
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what my dad said to me when my first week. He said, listen, you're going into an industry where you know nothing. So he said, when you're sitting in these meetings, shut your mouth, open your ears. He just said, just listen to what they're saying, and then just kind of try. You got to be a sponge. You just got to soak it all up, and then after a while, when you're building your confidence, you'll start to find yourself in like kind of integrating yourself in these conversations, and you'll start to pick up the terms. And I think that's when your confidence grows, and that could be 2 months, that could be 2 years. You don't know. Everyone goes at different paces, but certainly what I found that helped me was you're not always just learning in your project meetings. When you go into these events, when you're speaking to people outside informally, that actually helped me more than anything, because you can really come across as your own person. You kind of, you're getting to know more about that person on the other end of the table as well, because that client relationship, or if it's an internal relationship, that's not just a business thing. You're getting to know the person. You're going to spend a lot of time with them. You could be, the project could be years. So if you're having that side of it, it really helps, because you feel so much more relaxed. You feel so much more involved when, all these meetings come around. I think that's such a massive part, because I think you've just got to kind of just be a sponge, soak it up, and then eventually you'll find yourself just, oh, well, I know about that. I'll jump in here, and there's nothing wrong with that.
It strikes me too that when we talk about things like needing more people in the workforce and bringing a more diverse industry, sometimes it can be really easy to think of people as numbers, like I need 5 more people. But we're in an industry that's all about making long-lasting impacts. I mean, it's about building buildings that last generations. So why aren't we taking that approach when it comes to our employees? Obviously, like, they're more than just a number. There's so much more we can be doing with these young people to really help them become the future leaders of tomorrow. So thank you guys for elaborating more on that. I wanted to kind of get into a final moment, and I'd like you to kind of take 1 second and reflect on what's been probably the biggest encouragement, I guess, for you in your careers right now. I know it's a big question to ask, but I just would like to hear from that, because I think it would be something we can all learn from and maybe kind of do for our younger employees as well.
For me, I think it's trust. I think because as soon as I've got in with my job, my managers, the company, I felt that I have been trusted to learn, to take risks, and to the opportunity to go and do these things that we're doing now. I think trust is such a big part, because I think if I felt for 1 second there was uncertainty if I wanted to do something, or if they felt it was a bit uncomfortable, then it would really disencourage me. So that trust is the biggest thing for me. If I think that this trust doesn't trust me to go and learn this, or to go and speak to this person, that's all I want, the opportunity to go and do that.
Jamie.
Mine was going to be opportunity, but George has sort of taken that one.
Sorry.
So if I could spin it into more, maybe like the actual investment into younger people. If you'd have asked me when I started my job, do you think you're going to be sat there doing a podcast in nearly a year's time? I would have said absolutely not. What on earth are you going on about? But now, and that it is about trust as well, and it is about opportunity, and not to be repeating the same thing, but it is definitely all about that. And being able to go out into the industry and being trusted by your company to go and sort of be the face of the business, go and talk to your clients, go and talk to the consultants, because it does always come down to relationships a lot of the time. I know that I can pick up the phone to George and ask him anything that I need to about whatever, because you build those relationships with people.
Yeah, so investment and trust, those are really key phrases, and that's really important for us to take on. To kind of recap the conversation then, so it sounds like when we want to get more young people into the built environment, we need to be diversifying where we look, not just people who've trained specifically for construction. Everyone's got an interesting perspective, making the opportunity to go and meet with people one-on-one. But I feel like overall, the main thing has been just really leaning into the fact that young people have value to bring. They are the future. And if we're going to be shaping the future, we need to make sure that we're shaping it the right way, which means investing, as you said, Jamie, and trusting them to do the great work that we expect them to do. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this podcast. I hope you've had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely been lots of fun.
Yeah, good to hear. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to the podcast as well. If you'd like to stay more up to date with the podcasts that we have, we've got loads, and you can subscribe on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, or Spotify so that you never miss an episode. And if you want to know more about what's going on in the Northwest's built environment, check out placenorthwest.co.uk. And what is more, if you heard what Jaime was saying earlier about next working and you were like, I want to get involved, all you have to do is email Jaime to find out more. So her email address is jamie.stanton@morgansindall.com. Now that's Jaime, JAIME.STANTON @morgansindall.com to get involved. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.